I've always been someone who pushes myself to the limits. So when I started training for the Ragnar Relay in 2021, which was the first time I ever seriously worked on my running, I read a lot of advice, but mostly ignored anyone who said I should take it easy. Now, a little background information. First, I was a swimmer in high school, so I've never had a running coach. Second, the Ragnar is a 200-mile relay race, of which my part was 15 miles over the course of three relay legs. And I got into this as part of a major fundraiser to support our local ELCA camp. For me, this was a really big deal, both mentally and physically. I'd only ever done a 5K, but as a swimmer, I knew how to work hard, how to push myself, and the difference between injury and plain old muscle soreness. I'd never liked running, but crucially, I wanted to like running. And I knew that the only way to get better at something was to do it. So I worked hard. I got up early to get my miles in. I got a fancy watch that told me how fast I was going, and I challenged myself to go faster. I made it through the Ragnar in 2021, and I signed up right away for the next one. I trained all throughout the year with a goal of not just making it through, but of enjoying it. And during an 8.5 mile training run 1 month before the 2022 Ragnar, I developed an overuse injury and came home limping. I had been pushing too hard. After 3 months of physical therapy, I still wasn't really listening to my body as I started running again. I didn't want to admit that I actually needed to build up from zero. So I struggled through the next year of training, pushing too hard through every run. And during the Ragnar of 2023, which I also just barely made it through, I commented about my heart rate, and one of my teammates said, "Whoa, that is just way too high." I was pushing too hard. I was working too hard. It was my brother who told me about something called low heart rate training. Paradoxically, if you're going to do this training, you commit to slowing way down. Like so slow you could almost walk faster. So slow you're frustrated and laughing at yourself. So slow you definitely don't want anyone else to see you doing it. But my brother found that over the course of 2 months, he was able to run at his old pace, but his heart was going 30 beats per minute slower than he'd been running at before. This meant he was actually faster because he had room to push harder when he wanted to. This also means his slow runs can now actually be slow and easy and enjoyable. So now I've been doing this for about 2 weeks. It is painfully slow. I have had to completely separate my ego from everything I'm doing. I try to run when it's dark outside so that no one sees how slowly I'm running. But I'm noticing that my pace is already improving, even though it is, of course, nowhere near where I'd like it to be. It has, of course, only been 2 weeks after all. But I also notice that when I come home, I'm no longer wrecked. I'm no longer constantly injured and sore. It turns out that going at an all or nothing warp speed pace was working against me. It turns out that if I'm going to do this kind of work, I can't only be focused on one thing. There's more to running than what pace I'm running. Every day doesn't need to be, cannot be my fastest and my best. All or nothing thinking got me injured and almost made me think I was going to have to give up something. It turns out I actually really do like now, something I find really very life-giving. All or nothing thinking gets us into all kinds of trouble all the time. It's led us into fad diets and eating disorders, catastrophic patterns of thought and inaction regarding climate change and pollution, and inability to have productive conversations with each other about the things that really matter. It's also led people to believe that being Christian means they can't be a scientist or queer or even a woman who works outside of the home. Yes, that is most definitely still a thing. There are even some Christian sects that believe you can't be a Christian and vote or pay taxes or go to a doctor. The Pharisees were trying to entrap Jesus into a binary way of thinking too. Either you could be godly or you could participate in society. Which would he choose? But Jesus didn't take the bait. Jesus chose both. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. As humans, we live with a foot in each world, our own and God's kingdom, but God's imprint rests on each of us. So how does that knowledge impact the ways we interact with the world, the ways we impact the world? We are called to love and care for this world in ways that sometimes require us to put our own immediate desires aside for the sake of others. We're called to love and care for this world in ways that look at things long term so that our actions will have a positive impact for future generations. We're called to love and care for this world in the same way Jesus did, by participating in society, but by simultaneously holding power accountable when it harms the vulnerable. Caesar's imprint was on each of his coins to show his power. God's imprint rests on each of us as a sign of God's constant love. And knowing we are loved, we can trust that going slow can eventually let us go fast. In knowing we are loved, we know that we will make change in this world through work, but also through play and rest. In knowing we are loved, we are set free to love the world. Amen.